Alright, so this is going to be part 5 to What If Asta Had Sunshine. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
They took it to 10. Let me tell you how I come through with the 1-2, kicking shit like kung fu. Treat a bad bitch like she average. I'm a savage, little hoe, what you want do? I'm about cash if the wild fast. I'ma get that little nigga by any means.
Alright guys, so this is going to be part 5. We're going to go over the kind of fight versus Licht in the Midnight Sun and stuff like that. So before we actually get into the what if, I would like to ask you guys, I'm thinking of changing my name. Not really too much, just removing the Hernandez from it, just to make it easier and more simpler to kind of like, you know, say my name, say my like channel's name and things like that. So if you have any you know, if you want me to keep it the same, just tell me in the comments down below. But if you want me to change it, then, you know, just tell me that. So our story would have to start a little bit after the fight in the capital, right? And this is the point in the story where Finral is actually looking for people to actually do this mixer thing, which is meant to kind of get two people of the opposite gender kind of closer. So he's thinking of like bringing Asta, since he just is very confident and would be a good addition to it. So eventually he actually ends up bringing Luck, since he's the most normal, I guess, in terms of his kind of standards, right? Or he looks normal enough. So he brings him to the mixer. And this is the kind of mixer where he meets Rebecca. I believe that's her name, Rebecca. It's the woman that has the her brothers and sisters kind of helping her out as she runs that kind of restaurant. This part in particular isn't too important, so we'll say that it goes the same way as in, you know, the anime, except for the part with the kind of drunken person who comes to their table. Asta would not, you know, they wouldn't insult him for not having any magic or being small. The way that it will work is that Asta would just buff up, right? Using the stored up energy that he has. Not really in the means to like fight, but he actually just does this to kind of intimidate that guy, and he would back off. Which this means that Sekre would not get his own mixer interrupted. So does he smash? I don't know. You guys can tell me in the comments down below. But anyways, basically he would get invited to Asta would get invited to hang out with Rebecca and her family next time, or a few days later. And this would be around, you know, a couple days later, right? And he would be telling Magna about this, and this is when Noelle hears it, and she's kind of jealous, so she decides to tag along. In this one, Asta does not need to ask you know, Magna for a ride, since he has his own transportation magic, but he, you know, he still like tells him about it because, you know, they're friends, right? So I think in this one, Asta would be more accepting of other women's feelings, because if you didn't know, like I said in part 1, he doesn't really have that kind of romantic feelings towards Sister Lily because of how he viewed her as a mother figure instead of a, you know, not in that way, like how it does in canon, because of how she helped him kind of understand and control his magic, because she had water magic, which is a kind of one of the opposites, or a, you know, weakness of one of his magics. So that's the real reason why he doesn't have any feelings, and that's why I'm saying that he would have feelings or would accept feelings from others. So yeah. So we would cut to Gauche, and he would be walking down the kind of streets with a lot of presents on him, right? And the townsfolk are looking at him because they know about how he's very close to his sister, and they're pretty disgusted and giving him weird looks because he has a nosebleed. So he continues to go down this road, and he turns and he finds Marie. But not only that, but she's actually hanging off the arm of Asta, because Asta is hanging out or playing with the Rebecca's brothers and sisters, but also Marie, since she was close by because of the church. So as Gauche sees this, he basically stomps on Asta just how he does in the anime. And he would be like, "What's your deal, Gauche?" And this is around sunset, so he would have, at the mixer, he would have explained his own magic, since Rebecca would have been confused on why he was able to buff up. So they kind of know about his magic. But Gauche is doing this, and Marie would ask him to stop, saying that she's going to marry Asta in the future. And both Noelle and Gauche kind of get their soul crushed, right? And this makes Gauche even angrier. And this is when the nun comes through and basically takes Marie. So because she does this is what gets Gauche mad, and he basically calls her an old crone and an immortal demon and things like that, right? Things that he would have said in the anime. And Asta kind of gets mad at this, since she's a member of the church and a sister, just like Sister Lily. So he would kind of like stand up for her and say, "Gauche, you can't say that about someone that's part of the cloth." And Gauche wouldn't really care. And he's like, "Don't think I forgot about you trying to like seduce my sister," right? Because he's very overprotective, to a creepy point. So later on, we could do a little time skip. This would be about around, nighttime, right? Pretty late into the night. So this is when the mage, the snow mage, I believe his name is Neil. I forgot. I'll just call him Neil because that's what I heard, but I don't remember. So basically Neil does that kind of snow magic to kind of hypnotize all the small children in the area of the town to kind of come and go to this cave, right? And Asta's asleep at this point, and this is when Gauche actually tries to do a sneak attack on him, and this ends up with both of them going outside and both of them questioning why it's snowing, or at least Asta questions on why it's snowing. And this is when Noelle kind of shows up, basically saying that she saw the kids going a certain way and people are missing their children, and people figure out that something's off about this at that, and maybe there's an attack. And this is when the nun comes through and basically says that this magic, or this snow, is magical and is infused with some sort of spell that kind of hypnotize small children because their magic has not fully developed yet. So Gauche, the nun, and Asta actually go towards the cave, and Asta uses his chariot to get there, while Gauche kind of uses his broomstick, right? And they leave Noelle there to kind of protect the city just in case they come and attack it, and also to kind of give them a call, or call the reinforcements, right? So they figure out where to go because of the mirror that Marie has because of Gauche. So they kind of track the man in that way. And as they're looking around, they see this kid that's in the snow, and this is one of Rebecca's kind of kids it's her younger brother who didn't have that much magic. So Barrow, I think his name is the Mud Mage, and Neil kind of just threw him out because of that. So Asta basically, they have no real way of dispelling the spell just yet. So Asta kind of just they give him that kind of spell to kind of heal him and keep him warm, and they put him in a nearby cave, so he will kind of, I don't think they put him in a cave, but they put him in the kind of area that they do in the anime to kind of keep him safe, right? So the nun and Asta would continue going down the kind of the cave, and it's gonna be a little bit faster since they don't have that conversation with the kid in this one, so they would get there a little bit faster. So as Gauche is down there and he figures out that they're, gonna hurt Marie, this is when the snow mage uses his like magic to kind of make snowmen to kind of fight off Gauche, right? And Gauche can like take out multiple of these, but there's basically an endless wave of them. And this is when Asta kind of comes through using his scythe, right? And he would kind of do like a water slash, kind of like how he does in the anime, but with his scythe, right? So that's basically what he would do. And this would end up kind of hurting the person that has Marie captive, which is Barrow, the mud mage. Again, I don't remember if these are the correct names. I believe these are. I just don't remember. So this would cause Marie to kind of, become free and run towards what Gauche thinks is like going to be him, but actually runs into Asta's arms. And again, this kind of crushes his soul and gets him mad at Asta. And Gauche basically tells Asta, tells him that was a really risky move. You could have hit Marie, and he would be basically stomping him just like how he did earlier. And this is what would happen next. The mud mage would be scared because he just not only does Gauche, because he measured his power earlier using his glasses, he would say not only is that magic knight here, but also his two other friends. And he would check the kind of magic of Asta, and it would be like through the roof, right? And he's like, oh my gosh, how does this guy have so much power? And he doesn't even have a magic knight's robe, right? Because he doesn't think he's part of the magic knights, because he would have given that robe to the kid for like warmth, right? But actually no, I guess he wouldn't do that since the kid wasn't really conscious. So yeah, he would be like, wow. He'd be basically saying the same thing, but he wouldn't include that part about not being in the Magic Knights. So it would be Asta versus the Mud Mage, and then the Snow Mage versus Gauche. And they would the Snow Mage would use his kind of binding magic on Gauche, but then Gauche would use his real double to kind of go behind him and shoot him with a light beam from his mirror. So what would happen next is that Asta would use a kind of moonlight spell on what's it called, the mud mage, right? And I saw this in the comments where it was called like ice giant because of the Norse mythology and things like that, but it was about Asta transforming into it. But I'm gonna do it differently and say it's gonna be like a kind of summoning magic, or a kind of creation magic, kind of like the kind of giants that you can make already, like I think it was like Angry Earth Mother and Sticky Salamander, like those kind of like summonings or creations. So it's gonna be like moonlight magic, ice giant, right? And this is when Asta would kind of like use his like staff and like kind of put it into the ground, and this is when a giant kind of circle of like ice and water would kind of like form and go upwards and kind of create this kind of giant ice golem or giant. And this is basically kind of, he would like kind of smash the mud mage and anything he could really create, and this would take him out of the fight. So after that was done, this is when the nun would kind of bind him using her binding magic, and Asta and the mage, or not the mage, Asta would go up to the mud mage and tell him like, what gives you the right to take these kids' magic? All right, and he would like point his like scythe right up to him, right, almost threatening with him, like as if he was going to cut him. And the guy would complain like, why does it even matter, right? They didn't even know that they had their magics like taken away from them. And it looks like Asta's about to cut him, and this is when the nun tells him to stop, and it turns out Asta just cut right behind him into the wall, causing several kind of rocks to be sliced. And Asta would go back with the nun, and they would do a combination spell, and this combination spell would be a combination of her like healing lights, or yeah, but I'm pretty sure it's called healing lights. It's basically like that kind of candle. And I would say the healing spell that Asta has for his like moonlight magic would be moon dust, which is basically another comment that I got. So it would be like combination spell. I don't know what you would call it, but I guess I don't know, moonlight, but that doesn't really, or moonshine, I guess, I don't know. But basically this is enough to kind of heal and kind of take away that spell. So as that's going down, the mud mage is kind of stalling, and this is when he makes a mud kind of puppet to kind of go onto his table and trigger the kind of distress beacon that he has there. Oh, it's not really a distress beacon, it's more like a thing to tell him that they got done with the job. I forgot what they call it, but yeah. And this is when Gauche should basically say, alright kids, you gotta move. Marie deserves the best spot. And this is when Marie would be basically say, no, it's alright, I could pretty much go anywhere. And this is when Gauche would kind of I don't know how you would explain it. He would like kind of almost faint over the fact that Marie was so nice, and he would call her a perfect angel and things like that, right? And the nun would basically say like, it doesn't matter where she is, the spell's gonna work the same. So as that's going down, this is when the Eye of the Midnight Sun come through, and it's the girl with the sticky salamander, and they try to fight her, right? Gauche would try to shoot at her, but the magic wouldn't work because the light would just not refract, but bend within the kind of slime. So after that was done, this is when Asta would kind of try to go up and slice the salamander, trying to freeze it, but what would happen is that the salamander would kind of separate its body in certain ways, or bend its body in certain ways where it would dodge it, because it doesn't want to be frozen, and it's, and the mage would comment on like, well, the effects of your like freezing magic wouldn't really harm me if you can't touch, right? And yeah, so basically what would happen is that the kind of nun would use her magic, and she would be like flaming cross, and this would kind of burn, or kind of it would basically burn the salamander and kind of make it explode, just how it does in canon, right? So as this is done, she's kind of backed up into a corner, and Burrow, I think his name is, would basically say, hey, come on and free me, and then we'll be able to defeat him together, right? My mud magic could help. And she's basically saying like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, anything will work, or anything will do, I'll do anything. And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, are you really, really sure? And he's like, yes, just do it. And what happens is that she takes out a giant syringe and sticks it into his neck and injects him with it. So what happens next is like mud starts spewing out of his mouth and like other parts of his body, and he becomes this kind of monstrous giant kind of mud monster because of the kind of dark item that she used on him. So Asta would kind of, or not Asta, Gauche would basically take Marie and leave, because he has no real good chance against the salamander because of how her magic works, and he doesn't want to risk Marie getting hurt. And basically Marie's like, she tries to convince him to go back so he could help Asta and things like that. And this is when Gauche kind of has that kind of flashback about how he grew up and his family was murdered for their wealth, and he was basically kicked out of nobility, and he had to steal all of his life to basically help Marie, right? And he kind of remembers what Yami told him to kind of, when he joined the Magic Knights, to kind of protect what you believe needs protecting. And he basically just kind of like smiles and said, Yami, you always knew this was going to happen. And this is when he decides to go back, right? He kind of leaves Marie in a safe spot and goes back to help Asta and the nun fight off, right? So Asta would basically try to cut the monster, and as this is going down, it wouldn't really work. So what he would do is that he would activate his magic to make a snow giant, or not snow giant, the ice giant, as he did before. But what would happen is that I think the mud would just basically kind of cover him. As the kind of giant would kind of smash into him, the mud would just kind of cover the giant and kind of absorb him, I believe, or something to that effect, where it wouldn't really work too well. So this is when Ghost would come, and he would say, Asta, look into my eye, and he would reveal that he has a mirror in his eye, and he would basically say, mirror magic, I think it's called reflect barrage, I think it's called. And this is when a bunch of Astas would kind of come out, right? And these this kind of army of Astas would kind of use their scythe to kind of stab within the mud monster, and this, if a combination of all of them, would just kind of freeze him all over, and he would just crack into nothing, right? And Neil would go up to his kind of the coat that would be left over, and he would kind of swear to his life that he would always hate the salamander mage for doing this to his brother. And he kind of tells Asta that he's going to repent for what he did and what his brother did, so he's going to take responsibility. So with that kind of going down, this is when Licht would come in, because it looked like Asta basically told Neil that he would be his friend. All you have to do is just repay for everything you did. And as Neil or the snow mage was about to kind of hug him, this is when a light sword would go through him, causing him to fall on the ground. And Asta would be like, what was that? And then Gauche would also get stabbed, not fatally, obviously, because he is a elf reincarnation, so he wouldn't get stabbed in fatal spots. So this is when he would shoot towards Asta, and the nun would try to kind of protect him, but Asta, since he has moonlight magic and sunlight magic, he would be able to react to it. So what he would do is kind of push her out of the way and use his scythe to kind of spin and block the kind of attacks that would come through. And he would say, you don't need to sacrifice yourself for me. So this the nun doesn't actually get injured in this what if, so she's kind of okay in that sense. So as more and more light swords would come at him, Asta would basically ask so you're the leader of the Midnight Sun, huh? And he would basically what are you trying to do, attacking children like this? And this is when the kind of nun would also kind of chip into this and say, what's wrong with you? Children are born without sin. We must protect them. And this is when Licht or Partry would basically say, that's not true. No one is born without, they're born with sin from the day that they were born, or something to that effect, right? Just how he does in the anime. And Asta would be kind of confused about this, what are you talking about? And as this is happening, this is when Licht would shift over, or he would basically say like, you have no right to talk, especially with that grimoire, right? And because of this, what's it called? Or he wouldn't say grimoire, he would basically say with all that magic that you have, because Asta has a lot of magic in this one. So what happened is that he would kind of aim for the children with his like light magic, and this is when Yami would come and kind of block the shot, right? And this is when Asta would be like, oh, Captain Yami, how'd you get here? And he's like, I don't know, I think I got lost. Is this the way to the bar? Just how he does in the anime. And Finral would be there, and what Yami would say is that, alright Finral, take these kids to a safe place with that nun and make sure you come back, right? And Finral was kind of thinking to himself, like, how did he know I was going to leave him here? And as he's thinking this, there was a light like sword that was about to hit Finral, but Yami blocks it. And Yami basically tells Partry or Licht, like, are you trying to mess up my ride? So Finral would basically get all the children and Gauche and the nun to safety, and Yami would basically say, hey kid, try to learn something, will you? And this is when Yami would basically fight off Licht just how he does in the anime, using his like dark magic to kind of ward off all of his attacks and blocking it with his sword, just how he does in the anime. So as this is going down, what would happen is that Asta would be tasked to kind of fight Valtos, which is the spatial mage. So what Asta would do is that he would kind of spin his like scythe and just say like, I think the spell that the person commented was like called frost bombs, I think. So we're gonna go with that spell name. So he would spin his kind of like scythe, and this is when a bunch of kind of light blue orbs would like form behind him, and these are the projectiles called frost bombs. And he would basically spin his scythe and then point at Valtos, and this is when he would get hit by a barrage of these kind of ice projectiles, and that would explode on impact. So he would basically be taken out of the equation at this point. And this is when, as he's seeing, Valtos, fall, and be defeated, this is when Licht would become a lot more angrier with that. And he would use his light whip of judgment to kind of use this against Yami, since he knows Ki. And this would basically destroy the kind of roof of the cave and kind of make it collapse on Yami and Asta, right? And this would show outside with like lights, the sunlight would beam through the kind of giant hole that was created. And Valtos, still being somewhat conscious, would be like, that was amazing, master, you truly have the magics of the gods. And this is when some like heat is starting to like form. You see heat waves coming through the kind of cracks of the floor, and a bunch of the rocks kind of explode outwards, right? And this is when Asta would be buff with like a cruel sun on his finger, and he would basically say like, a god, who decided that? And this is when he would launch a cruel sun towards Partry and Valtos, right? But I think what would happen is that Partry or Licht would just shoot a bunch of light kind of swords at it to kind of stop it and explode it, right? And Partry or Licht would be like confused, like, so this is the guy who has the two magics, huh? That's pretty interesting, right? So as we go along this, right, this is when Partry or Licht basically says, all right, I'm gonna have to stop playing around, I'm gonna have to end this, right? And he like turns a page on his grimoire, and he's about to do an attack. So we cut back at the church, right? And this is when Gauche is like pretty exhausted, right? And everyone basically offers up their magic to him so that he could go back and fight with Asta. So what Yami does is that he kind of puts that kind of dark cocoon over them to kind of protect them from the spell, right? So he would question Yami like, what are you doing? He's like, well, we're just like, I just put up this like defense mode so we could have time to think, right? And Asta's like, do you think I could, slice it using my divine axe? And Yami would be like, oh, if you want to like die, then maybe. So Asta's like, so what do we do? And he's like, I don't know, maybe you could try not giving up. And this is when the kind of spell is activated and looks like light magic extinction ray, I think it's called. I don't know, I forgot what the name of the kind of spell was, but basically he shoots this giant beam of light, right? And Yami's basically said like, oh, we're dead. And this is when Gauche actually comes through and says mirror magic full reflection, and he would have this giant mirror in front of them, and this would reflect the light back at Partry or Licht, right? And this would kind of hit him and injure him. And Gauche should basically say like, your light magic might be, very powerful, but it's still light, so that means my mirrors can reflect it. So I'm gonna end it here, and in the next part we'll get to the second part of the fight and then get into the next kind of arc. So yeah, this is gonna be a shorter video for my Black Clover what if, but a lot of people wanted this series and it's been a little bit more than a week. So yeah, I'm basically gonna have this up, and then later on I might do another video if I have time, probably late into like the night or the afternoon, I guess. So yeah, I would just like to tell you guys I'm very grateful for 1K, and I would also like to say that my community tab should open up like next week, because it takes a week for that kind of process. And if you don't know, you need to be at 1,000 subscribers for the community tab to actually open up. So yeah, so with that being said, this is going to be the end of the video. So yeah,